Good evening, everyone. We're continuing through the book of Samuel, and now we're going to see Samuel as judge. So this is chapter 7, verse 3. When Samuel said to all the house of Israel, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, then put away the foreign gods and the Astartes that from among you. Direct your hearts to the Lord and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hands of the Philistines." So Israel put away the Baals and the Astartes, and they served the Lord only. Baal is kind of the chief pagan god. He's like the sky god, and he's like the chief masculine god figure. And Astartes is the female one. So this is like the two dual ones. So this is kind of like Zeus and Hera, if you were in the Greek pantheon. Then Samuel said, "Gather all Israel at Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you." So they gathered at Mizpah and drew water and poured it out before the Lord. They fasted that day and said, "We have sinned against the Lord." And Samuel judged the people of Israel at Mizpah. When the Philistines heard that the people of Israel had gathered at Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. And when the people of Israel heard of it, they were afraid of the Philistines. Just a quick side note on the word Lord. So the Lord comes from that, means ruler or master. And so you can see the difference between Lord, and usually they indicate this in the Bible where they do it as like all capitals versus like the Lord. And so that is to indicate that this is referring to God and not just like an earthly ruler. And so this word kind of fell out of practice so much in the modern English, but actually it still is there. So we refer to God as the Lord, and we're saying master at that time. So in certain other language, it actually becomes more prominent. So like señor, which is basically the mister for like in Spanish, is that same word, is the Lord. So and actually it has this, you'll notice it's señor, Lord. It's that same origin actually. And so when you're saying someone is a mister in Spanish, you're actually saying Lord, whatever that person's name is. The people of Israel said to Samuel, "Do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us, and pray that he may save us from the hands of the Philistines." So Samuel took a sucking lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. Samuel cried out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. As Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to attack Israel. But the Lord thundered with a mighty voice that day against the Philistines and drew them into confusion, and they were routed before Israel. And the men of Israel went out to Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and struck them down as far as beyond Beth-kar. When Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Jeheztha, and named it Ebenezer. And he said, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." So the Philistines were subdued and did not again enter the territory of Israel. The hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. The towns that the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to Israel, from Ekron to Gath. And Israel recovered their territory from the hands of the Philistines. There was peace between Israel and the Amorites. Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life. He went on a circuit year by year to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, and he judged Israel in all these places. Then he would come back to Ramah, for his home was there. He administered justice there to Israel and built there an altar to the Lord. So this is kind of nice because you kind of get an insight of how like the culture worked. So how did the judges work? So he's on a circuit. And this is actually even how, the Supreme Court justices worked in the early United States. They've like half the year they were actually doing judging outside of it, and they would have circuits, especially in the bigger territories. And so you'd kind of go around. And here you have him going around from town to town for a couple, and he's again kind of like that Moses. You come to him, he settles the dispute, he's well respected, so everyone kind of abides by the elders' rule, and then he kind of goes home. So it's kind of that, it's a very colloquial way of handling it, an informal way, but it works to some extent. When Samuel became old, he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn son was Joel, and the name of his second son was Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. Yet his sons did not follow in his ways, but turned aside after gain, and took bribes and perverted justice. So who does this sound like? If you remember, this was the same problem that Eli had and his sons, that they were using their, obviously it's a powerful position to be a judge, and so obviously that's why you need someone who's a trustworthy person, but now you'd think, oh, we can trust his sons, but now his sons are falling into that same problems. So we're seeing that Samuel, as he gets older, he's not going to be as strong as he once was, because he's not being that good leadership position. He's not being that good father. So it's that kind of parallel between being a good father and being a good leader. And so it's okay, well, he's having problems with his sons, then he's probably neglecting some of his fatherhood duties kind of thing. And so now you can see the Israelites, they're rightly concerned. They're okay, every single time in the past, whenever we've had the judge, we've had peace when the judge comes, but when the judge leaves or dies, it goes back to bad times. And Samuel's getting older, and his sons are corrupt. They're not going to lead us well. So they're rightfully understood. You can see why the Israelites would be scared, don't think that this is going well, that their leadership, they can see that their leadership is not strong right now, or the future leadership doesn't look too bright. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not follow in your ways. Appoint for us then a king to govern us, like other nations." But the thing displeased Samuel, and they said, "Give us a king to govern us." Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to the voice of the people in all that they said to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me for being king over them." So again, going back to that idea of being a lord, they're basically coming and saying, give us a new master. Because there's a difference between a judge, who's like one of you and that kind of stuff, and you, again, isn't inherited in the same way, and a king. A king is you owe fealty to, and you have all these other kind of things. So they're basically like, they just said, the Lord will be our God, and they're like, no, now we need an earthly Lord. Now we need a new Lord. No, God is supposed to be your king. God is supposed to be your Lord. And they're like, well, you can understand their nervousness, because all the other tribes around them, the king can centralize power, and there is power to having that one strong leader who can give you demands so you aren't divisive, but that's supposed to be the Lord. They're supposed to be united in service to the Lord. "Just as they have done to me from the day I brought them out of Egypt to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so also they are doing to you. Now then, listen to their voice only. You shall solemnly warn them and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them." So Samuel reported all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, "These will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots and to be his horsemen and to run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest and to make his implements of war and the equipment of his chariots." So again, chariots are a symbol of war. Horses are a symbol of war. All these positions, besides he's going to take the plows to supply his armies. So he's going to do this more militaristic kind of thing, so to be that conquering image. "He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his courtiers. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his courtiers. He will take your male and female slaves and the best of your cattle and donkeys and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you in that day." So this is coming down to the great debate between safety and freedom. And this is the eternal debate between safety and freedom. The more free you are, and the more free your neighbors are, the less safe you are. Because they're free to violate your freedoms and vice versa. So a king can come in and be powerful and rule over you and take your stuff, and it might provide safety, but he's going to take your things. So it's always about trying to find that balance. And of course, through the church, we want to do that through following God's will. But this is the warning. So it's like, okay, so they're scared. They're scared the Philistines are going to come in and kill them, and they've had all these issues, and they're constant warfare and these petty little things. So it's understandable that they're scared. This is what you're going to have to give up. This is what are going to be the consequences of your actions. Are you okay with that? Do you realize what you're getting into? And we're going to see how the people respond. But the people refused to listen to the voice of Samuel. They said, "No, but we are determined to have a king over us, but that we also may be like other nations." Why would you want to be like other nations? Shouldn't you be a nation set apart, a people set apart? You should be different. Why do you want to be like other nations? Why do you, again, we want to worship their gods, we want to do that thing. So it's kind of giving into all of that kind of temptation. "And that our king may govern us and go out before us and fight our battles." And there's the key line. They want to fight our battles for us. We want to be safe. We want to be protected. We don't want to have to worry about these things. So we're willing to give up these things to be safe. When Samuel had heard all the words of the people, he repeated them in the ears of the Lord. The Lord said to Samuel, "Listen to their voice and set a king over them." Samuel then said to the people of Israel, "Each of you return home." So the other thing about this too is how it's envisioned or how it's presented is just like one conversation. Like all the people gather and Israel says, "We demand a king." Samuel says, and there's just like one conversation. And of course, this is supposed to represent a whole movement. This isn't just like one conversation one day. This is a growing demand, a growing urge. It's a cultural shift that's going, represented in this one conversation. Not that these conversations didn't happen. They most certainly did. But this is a representation of what was probably dozens and hundreds of conversations among not just Samuel and the people of Israel, but all the different tribes and how they relate to each other. So remember, when the scripture speaks very definitively, that's to sum up. It's not ever as definitive as that. Because you remember when they said, like, then they cleared out all the nations in the next chapter, and they were still fighting the nations until they killed them to the last man, the next chapter, and then they came back. And so it's like, whenever they say definitively, that's just to show it's kind of like the end of that moment, that it's rarely as definitive. So even when they establish the kingship, it's not going to be easily suddenly, and then everyone recognized the king, and it was all perfect, and everyone did it. So it's always messier than how they present it, because reality is always a little bit messier than the story for us to understand. We can never have the full context. "There was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish of Abiel, son of Zeror, son of Bechorath, son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a man of wealth. He had a son whose name was Saul, a handsome young man. There was not a man among the people of Israel more handsome than he. He stood head and shoulders above everyone else." So you remember how usually he picks the unexpected. So this one, he's going to start with picking the more expected. And then we're going to see shift, and so we're going to compare him to David later on. So we have a wealthy man, and he has a beautiful, handsome son who's head and shoulders above everyone else. And so he looks kingly. He looks the part. So you could see why people would follow him. Now the donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, had strayed. So Kish said to his son, "Take one of the boys with you. Go and look for the donkeys." In the hill, he passed through the hill country of Ephraim and passed through the land of Shalashash. But they did not find them. And they passed through the land of Shalom. But they did not find them. They were not there. Then he passed through the land of Benjamin. But they did not find them. When he came to the land of Zuph, Saul said to the boy who was with him, "Let us turn back, or my father will stop worrying about the donkeys and worry about us." But he said to him, "There is a man of God in this town. He is a man held in honor. Whatever he says always comes true. Let us go there now. Perhaps he will tell us about the journey on which we have set out." Then Saul replied to the boy, "But if we go, what can we bring this man? For the bread in our sacks is gone, and there is no present to bring to the man of God. what have we?" The boy answered Saul again, "Here, I have with me a quarter shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God to tell us our way. Formerly in Israel, anyone who went to inquire of God would say, 'Come, let us go to the seer,' for the one who is now called a prophet is formerly called a seer." Saul said to the boy, Good, come, let us go." So they went to the town where the man of God was. As they went up to the hill to the town, they met some girls coming out to draw water, and said to them, "Is the seer here?" They answered, "Yes. There he is just ahead of you. Hurry. He has come just now to the town, because the people have a sacrifice today at the shrine. As soon as you enter the town, you will find him, before he goes up to the shrine to eat. For the people will not eat until he comes, since he must bless the sacrifice. Afterwards, those eat who are invited. Now go up, for you will meet him immediately." So they went up to the town. So they were entering the town and saw Samuel coming out towards them on his way to the shrine. So this is actually a good thing. So he's on his way. He's acting as priest, as prophet. He's on his way to do a priestly role, to offer sacrifice. And so it's kind of an appropriate time for this to happen. So we're in that mode of sacrifice offering at the altar. Now the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed to Samuel, "Tomorrow, about this time, I will send to you a man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him to be ruler over my people Israel. He shall save my people from the hands of the Philistines, for I have seen the suffering of my people, because their outcry has come to me." When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord told him, "Here is the man of whom I spoke to you. He is who shall rule over my people." Then Saul approached Samuel inside the gate and said, "Tell me, please, where is the house of the seer?" Samuel answered Saul, "I am the seer. Go up before me to the shrine, for today you shall eat with me, and in the morning I will let you go, and tell you all that is on your mind. As for your donkeys, they were lost 3 days ago. Give no further thought of them, for they have been found, and on whom is all Israel's desire fixed, if not on you and on your ancestral house?" Saul answered, "I am only a Benjaminite, from the least of the tribes of Israel, and my family is the humblest in all of the family of the tribe of Benjamin. Why, then, have you spoken to me in this way?" So again, are you the seer? Yes, and here, let me prove it. The donkey, so I'm going to tell you what you've been looking for, and this isn't really what you're looking for. You're concerned with these earthly things with the donkeys. Don't worry about that. This is what you're really called to. So he's kind of proving his worth right away. Again, it's that movie scene where it's like you go up and see the magician or the prophet or something, and he instantly already confirms himself kind of thing and does it. So it's that kind of scene. Then Samuel took Saul and his servant boy and brought them into the hall and gave them a place at the head of those who have been invited, of whom there were about 30. And Samuel said to the cook, "Bring the portion I gave you, the one I asked you to put aside." The cook took up the thigh and what went with it, and set them before Saul. Samuel said, "See, what was kept is set before you. Eat, for it is set before you at the appointed time, so that you might eat with the guests." Saul ate with Samuel that day. When they came down from the shrine into the town, a bed was spread for Saul on the roof, and he lay down to sleep. Then at the break of dawn, Samuel called to Saul upon the roof, "Get up, so that I may send you on your way." Saul got up, and both he and Samuel went out into the street. As they were going down to the outskirts of the town, Samuel said to Saul, "Tell the boy to go before us, and when he has passed on, stop here yourself for a while, that I may make known to you the word of God." Samuel took a phial of oil and poured it on his head and kissed him. He said, "The Lord has anointed you ruler over the people Israel. You shall reign over the people of the Lord, and you will save them from the hand of their enemies all around. Now this shall be the sign for you that the Lord has anointed you ruler over the heritage. When you depart from me today, you will meet two men by Rachel's tomb in the territory of Benjamin at Zelzah. They will say to you, 'The donkeys that you went to seek are found,' and now your father has stopped worrying about them and is worrying about you, saying, 'What shall I do about my son?' Then you shall go on from there further and come to the oak of Tabor. 3 men going up to God at Bethel will meet you there, one carrying 3 kids, another carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another carrying a skin of wine." To be clear, that's kids as in little goats, not as in small children. They will greet you and give you 2 loaves of bread, which you shall accept from them. After that, you shall come to Gibeath Elohim, at the place where the Philistine garrison is. There, as you come to the town, you will meet a band of prophets coming down from the shrine with harp, tambourine, flute, and lyre playing in front of them. They will be in a prophetic frenzy. Then the Spirit of the Lord will possess you, and you will be in a prophetic frenzy along with them. And be turned into a different person. Now, when these signs meet you, do whatever you see fit to do, for God is with you. And you shall go down to Gilgal ahead of me, and I will come down to you to present burnt offerings and offer sacrifices of well-being. For 7 days you shall wait until I come to you and show you what you shall do." So, all of this is to basically convince Saul of his own destiny. Because if somebody came up and said, "You're going to be king, and I anoint you king, and there's never been a king before, and what are you talking about?" And it's kind of like, imagine if somebody came up, "I'm going to make you president. Trust me, you're going to be president tomorrow." And you're like, that's not how that works. And that doesn't exist. And so you're like, well, let me show you these signs. And these signs are going to accompany you. And it's going to end with a prophetic frenzy. So you're, again, prophetic, see what is supposed to be. And not only that, you will be a different person. So yeah, I'm anointing you. I'm making you different. I'm making you a Messiah, an anointed one. You're now anointed for a divine purpose. And so that line with anointed, priests, prophets, and kings are the ones who are anointed. And the line between those is often blurred because the roles are blurred. So the king acts in spiritual senses as a leader of the people and vice versa. So we've already seen Samuel. He's part priest, he's part prophet. And now we're going to see the king is going to be part prophet as well. As he turned away to leave Samuel, God gave him another heart, and all these signs were fulfilled that day. When they were going from there to Gilgal, a band of prophets met him, and the Spirit of God possessed him, and he fell into a prophetic frenzy along with them. Then all who knew him before saw how he prophesied with the prophets, and people said to one another, "What has come over the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets?" A man of this place answered, "And who is their father?" Therefore it became a proverb. Is Saul also among the prophets? When his prophetic frenzy had ended, he went home. Saul's uncle said to him and to the boy, "Where did you go?" And he replied, "To seek the donkeys." And when he saw they were not to be found, he went to Samuel. Saul's uncle said, "Tell me what Samuel said to him." Saul said to his uncle, "He told us that the donkeys had been found, but about the matter of the kingship of which Samuel had spoken, he did not tell him anything." Not ununderstandable, pretty understandable to not Again, if you see this crazy old man who wants to proclaim you king, maybe keep that to yourself for a little while. Samuel summoned the people of the Lord at Mizpah and said to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I brought you out of the land of Egypt, and I rescued you out of the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of the kingdoms that were oppressing you. But today you have rejected your God, who saves you, and from all the calamities and your distresses, and you have said, 'No, but set a king over us.' Now therefore present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and by your clans." Then Samuel brought all the tribes of Israel near to the tribes of Benjamin, was taken by lot. He brought the tribe of Benjamin near by its families, and the families of the Martinites was taken by lot. Finally, he brought the family of the Martites near man by man, and Saul, the son of Kish, was taken by lot. But then they sought him, he could not be found. So they inquired again of the Lord, "Did the man come here?" And the Lord said, "See, he was hidden himself among the baggage." Then they ran and brought him from there. When he took his stand among the people, he was head and shoulders taller than any of them. Samuel said to all the people, "Do you see the one among the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among the people." And all the people shouted, "Long live the king." So again, we are doing this rallying moment. So how are we going to choose the king? So if you let things up to lot, like by chance, that's kind of the way of like leaving up to God in a certain sense. So you'll see this in a couple times in the scripture where they'll do, actually they do that even in when they pick the first deacon. They have a couple people and then they pick by lot who's going to be. And this is kind of reconfirmed. So it's, even though Samuel already knows who God's going to choose, he does this for the sake of the people to say, "See, this doesn't show that I'm not just picking the king. I'm not going to pick my buddy or anything like that. God's going to pick. We do it by lot, and it confirms what we already know, that God has chosen Saul to be the next king." Now, it's not a very auspicious start because he's hiding in the baggage. He's scared to take on his role, so that's not the most auspicious of starts. He's kind of showing a little bit of cowardice. And again, when he's heading taller, it's kind of like, what are you afraid of? You're bigger than everybody here. Again, think about like Goliath later on, who's going to be that giant. And you're like, what are you afraid of? You're supposed to be really tall. Samuel told the people the rights and duties of the kingship, and he wrote them in a book and laid it up before the Lord. Then Samuel sent all the people back to their homes. Saul also went to his home at Gibeah, and with him went warriors whose hearts God had touched. But some worthless fellows said, "How can this man save us?" They despised him and brought him no present, but he held his peace. So, the whole idea is having a king is to bring unity. And we've seen that the pettiness of the tribes of Israel have been infighting and all this kind of stuff and civil war and unrest. And so the idea of a king is supposed to unite you. Of course, the God is supposed to be the ultimate uniting. But we're going to now see, can we unite under Saul? And we're seeing that already. Okay, some people are going to accept him, but some people are going to say, well, who's this guy? Why should I follow him? Why should I listen to him? Now, Nahash, king of the Amorites, had been grievously oppressing the Gadites and the Reubenites. He would gouge out the right eye of each of them and would not grant Israel a deliverer. No one was left of the Israelites across the Jordan whose right eye Nahash, king of the Amorites, had not gouged out. But there were 7,000 men who had escaped from the Amorites and entered Jabesh Gilead. About a month later, Nahash the Amorite went up and besieged Jabesh Gilead. And all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, "Make a treaty with us, and we will serve you." So remember, they just made a treaty with Saul. That was the nice kind of interesting part, was that Samuel writes down the rights and responsibilities on both parts. They're basically making a covenant. A covenant has that. These are your rights and your responsibilities, and it comes with that. So it's not exactly a constitutional monarchy, but it's not meant to be an absolute monarchy either. He has limits. He has the rules and regulations that are defined. But Nahash the Amorite said to them, "On this condition I will make a treaty with you, namely that I gouge out everyone's right eye, and thus put disgrace upon all Israel." The elders of Jabesh said to him, "Give us 7 days respite, that we may send messengers through all the territory of Israel. Then, if there is no one to save us, we will give ourselves up to you." When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul, they reported the matter in the hearing of the people, and all the people wept out loud. Now Saul was coming from the field behind the oxen, and Saul said, "What is the matter with the people, that they are weeping?" So they told him the messenger of the inhabitants of Jabesh. So Saul is out still doing his duty. So while he's been anointed king and some people have accepted him, he's still got chores to do. They still got things to do. And so it's not like they instantly built a big palace for him. He's still there. So you're going to see him build up his respect and power as he goes. And the Spirit of God came upon Saul in power when he heard these words, and in his anger was greatly kindled. He took a yoke of oxen and cut them in pieces and sent them throughout all the territory of Israel by messenger, saying, "Whoever does not come out after Saul and Samuel, so shall it be done to his oxen." Then the dread of the Lord fell upon the people, and they came out as one. Then he mustered them at Bezek, those who Israel were 300,000, and those from Judah 70,000. They said to the messengers who had come, "Thus shall you say to the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow by the time the sun is hot, you shall have deliverance." When the messengers came and told the inhabitants of Jabesh, they rejoiced. So the inhabitants of Jabesh said, "Tomorrow we will give ourselves up to you, and you may do to us whatever seems good to you." The next day Saul put the people in 3 companies. At the morning watch they came into the camp and cut down the Amorites until the heat of the day. And thus those who survived were scattered, so that no 2 of them were left together. The people said to Samuel, "Who is it that said, 'Shall Saul reign over us?' Give them to us so that we may put them to death." But Saul said, "No one shall be put to death this day, for today the Lord has brought deliverance to Israel." So he's starting out really good. So you see him, he makes a leadership claim. He's angered by this assault on the people of Israel. He gathers and unites Israel. He does it through a little bit of scarily, through fear and stuff, but he still does it. And that's kind of, sometimes you need to get the fear of the Lord in the people to do what they need to do. And so they're united and they come and they defeat the enemies of Israel. So Saul starts out good. He's supposed to start out good. Of course, we all know how the story is going to go, but it starts out well. He had the potential. If he had made the right decisions, he could have been the great king of Israel. Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal, and there renew the kingship." So all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before the Lord of Israel in Gilgal. Then they sacrificed offerings of well-being before the Lord, and then Saul and all of Israel rejoiced greatly. So now that all the people are there, first we had him do it, and it was probably kind of his own tribe, and okay, we accept you as king. And now he gathers them together and does this, and now they're all like, okay, now we're all, Israel is united, we're all proclaiming you king. Now again, this isn't the kingship like we think about in like medieval times and things like that, where you have vassal states and all that. Kingship is much looser. It's much a looser term. You're the chief. It almost would be better to think of it as chief. You're the chief. You're in charge, but it's a little loose. It's not dynastic or anything like that at this point, because they haven't had time. It has to develop, and those things have to culturally develop. So while it's there, what being a king means is still yet to be defined, and how much control and sway he has is mostly at this point cultural and social. So if they choose not to obey him, he can't quite enforce it yet. So remember, you always got to keep that back in mind. This isn't like a government that we would have today. It's much looser. Chief would be a better way of us for thinking about it on like power-wise. Samuel said to all Israel, "I have listened to you in all that you have said to me, and have set a king over you. See, it is the king who leads you. Now, I am old and gray, but my sons are with you. I have led you from my youth until this day. Here I am, testifying against me before the Lord and before his anointed. Whose ox have I taken, or whose donkey have I taken, or whom have I defrauded, whom have I oppressed, or from whose hands have I taken a bribe to blind my eyes with it? Testify against me, and I will restore it to you. They said, you have not defrauded us or oppressed us or taken anything from the hand of anyone. So, if I'm unjust, claim it now. Okay, no, you're just. Okay, if I'm just but then you pay attention to my words. If you're going to say I'm just, the next words I say are also going to be just, so pay attention. The Lord is witness against you, and his anointed is witness this day that you have not found anything in my hand. And they said, he is witness. Samuel said to the people, the Lord is witness, who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your ancestors up out of the land of Egypt. Now, therefore, take your stand, so that I may enter into judgment with you before the Lord. And I will declare to you all the saving deeds of the Lord that was performed for you and for your ancestors. When Jacob went into Egypt and the Egyptians oppressed them, then your ancestors cried to the Lord, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought forth your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them in his place. But they forgot the Lord their God, and he sold them into the hand of Sisera, commander of the army of King Jabin of Hazor, and into the hands of the Philistines, and into the hands of the king of Moab, and they fought against them. Then they cried to the Lord and said, we have sinned because we have forsaken the Lord and have served the Baals and the Astartes. But now rescue us out of the hand of your enemies, and we will serve you. And the Lord sent Jerubbaal and Barak and Jephthah and Samson, and rescued you out of the hand of your enemies on every side, and you lived in safety. But when you saw the king Nahash of the Amorites came against you and said to me, no, but a king shall reign over us. Through the Lord your God was your king. See, there is the king whom you have chosen, for whom you have asked. See the Lord, he set a king over you. If you will fear the Lord and serve him and heed his voice and not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, and if both you and the king who reigns over you will follow the Lord your God, it will be well. But if you will not heed the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the commandments of the Lord, then the hand of the Lord will be against you and your king. Now, therefore, take your stand and see this great thing that the Lord has done before your eyes. It is not the wheat harvest today. I will call upon the Lord that he may send thunder and rain, and you shall know and see that in the wickedness that you have done in the sight of the Lord is great in demanding a king for yourselves. So Samuel called upon the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people greatly feared the Lord and Samuel. So if it's the wheat harvest, you do that at the driest part of the season. So if it's like the driest part of the season, then rain comes in the middle of it. That's the significance there of it being in the middle of the wheat harvest. And then you can't harvest the wheat. You have to wait until it's dry again, because it has to be dry, and it makes it a lot easier if everything's dry. And you can't harvest it when it's wet, or it'll get ruined. All the people said to Samuel, pray to the Lord your God for your servants, so that we may not die, for we have added to all our sins the evil of demanding a king for yourselves. And Samuel said to the people, do not be afraid. You have done all this evil, yet do not turn aside from following the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart, and do not turn aside after useless things that cannot profit or save, for they are useless. For the Lord will not cast away his people for his great name's sake, because it was pleased the Lord to make you a people for himself. Moreover, as for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you. and I will instruct you in the good and in the right way. Only fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart, for consider what great things you have done for you. But if you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, both you and your king. So you have a king. You got what you wanted. God's willing to work with you in what you wanted, even in that second best way. Okay, the king isn't ideal, but God will still compromise with you and give you what you want. But it's not going to be enough. You still have to serve the Lord. So the king isn't going to do what you think he's going to do. You still have to serve the Lord. And now there's kind of a problem, because if you serve the Lord, but your king doesn't, if your king becomes wicked, which we're going to see in the future, then he can lead you astray, actually. So now you have an external problem, because you have this external leader, and the leader enough. We've all seen situations where a bad leader can lead the whole group astray, even if the group has good intentions. And so it's one of those kind of situations. So here's all the things that God has done for you in the past. Here where you are now. This is kind of like think about when they first entered the promised land with Joshua. And Joshua said, here's the deal. God is very clear about the deal he always makes. Here's the deal. It's going to be hard, but it's worthwhile. Stay loyal. And then, of course, they never do, because, of course, we never do, because we always fall. How many times have you left confession thinking, this time I'm going to do it, I'm going to conquer, and then 2 weeks later, shoot, fell into that same dang sin again. So it's that kind of thing. So it's now they're at the king and they accept it. Okay, so we're going to stop there for today, and then we're going to enter in it. So we're at a little bit, it's a mixed. It's kind of a high point because they have their king, but it's kind of low because of how they went about it. So it's a kind of a mixed bag. Saul has potential, but it probably wasn't the most ideal situation, so we're going to see how that goes from there. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Good night, everybody. Quick note. Starting in September, check your bulletin for the exact dates. September is going to be a little bit of a messy month because I'm out of town for 2 weeks for various things, and the 7 o'clock Mass is going to be shifting back to 6 o'clock to help save the light. Also with RCIA, we're going to be switching on and off between the Bible series and RCIA classes. In the RCIA classes, we're going to have a public session that's going to be done like this, where I'm going to do a presentation, which you're all welcome to, and the whole parishes are going to be welcome to, and again, we're going to live stream it and record it, and then we're going to go back and forth between that and the Bible studies. And it'll all be published in the bulletin which week is which, but just be aware that over the next couple weeks and months, we're shifting back to 6 o'clock, and then the Bible series and the lecture afterwards going to change from topic to topic. But you're always invited, so that's the nice part.